Diana Falk stood at the edge of the arena, her eyes scanning the crowd. The once celebrated exoanthropologist had traded in her academic career for a much grimmer reality: underground combat training. Her reputation as a researcher, specializing in the study of alien cultures, had earned her respect across the galaxy. But that was before humanity became involved in the intergalactic Colosseum battles, a system where species fought in grand arenas to prove their dominance without traditional warfare. In the beginning, these contests were a way to keep the peace, a substitute for war between galactic powers. Each species would send their best warriors, and the battles would serve as a demonstration of strength, intelligence, and skill. But things had changed. The weapons were banned. At first, many believed it would level the playing field. The idea was simple: force combatants to rely on their natural abilities, skills, and tactics instead of their advanced technology. But that didn't go as planned. For the alien species, who had relied on technology and weaponry for centuries, the weapon ban was a disaster. They couldn't compete without their high-tech gadgets or weaponry. The ban exposed a horrifying truth for them: they were not physically built to survive in hand-to-hand combat. Their strength, agility, and endurance were simply no match for humans. Humans, on the other hand, thrived in the arena. Their natural strength, reflexes, and physical conditioning turned them into the ultimate competitors. In a galaxy full of advanced technology, humanity's biological superiority was suddenly their greatest weapon. Species that once prided themselves on their impressive combat technologies were now watching in awe as humans dominated the arena, their hands and feet more deadly than any weapon ever created. Diana Falk was thrust into this world of combat and chaos, a world she had never imagined herself being part of. She had always believed that knowledge and diplomacy would lead the way to understanding between species. But now, her new mission was to train humans to fight not with machines, but with their bodies. She had become an unwilling coach to a group of gladiators, each one a trained fighter, pushing their physical limits to survive and win. As she entered the massive arena, the noise from the crowd was deafening. Thousands of aliens from different planets filled the stands, watching eagerly as the combatants prepared to face each other. The arena, once a place of pride for its advanced technology, now felt like a gladiatorial pit. The stone floors and grandstands were adorned with holographic advertisements, but the essence of the battles remained ancient bare-knuckle, hand-to-hand combat. Diana shivered as she looked around, remembering the peaceful academic life she had once lived. But this wasn't about knowledge anymore. This was about survival. Diana's job was to train the gladiators' humans who had been chosen to represent their species. She watched as the first battle of the day commenced. Two towering alien warriors clashed in the middle of the arena, their powerful bodies crashing against each other. The crowd roared with excitement, but it was clear from the start that the aliens weren't equipped to deal with a human fighter. The battle was over quickly. One of the aliens was knocked unconscious by a well-placed punch from a human gladiator. The crowd went wild. Humanity was unstoppable. However, something was off. Diana had been training these fighters for months, preparing them for their greatest challenges. But she had noticed something troubling. The more they won, the more they began to believe in their own invincibility. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for pride, for dominance. Some of them had started to take the violence too far, pushing the limits of what was acceptable in the arena. Diana could see the growing darkness in their eyes. The once disciplined fighters were beginning to see themselves as more than just warriors. They saw themselves as conquerors. Then, one day, Diana received a cryptic message. The message was hidden in the data stream of the arena's system, an encrypted file that seemed to have no origin. It was an anonymous communication, but the content was too important to ignore. The message contained shocking information. The ban on weapons had not been put in place for fairness, as everyone had been led to believe. It was part of a covert plot by the galactic elites. They didn't want humans to have access to advanced technology in the arena, not because they were afraid of human innovation, or because it would level the playing field. The truth was much darker. The aliens had already seen the potential for human violence and domination in other areas of the galaxy. The weapons ban was meant to strip humans of their greatest asset, their natural, raw power. By forcing them into physical combat, The elites believed they could create a situation where humans would struggle, a situation where humanity would eventually fail and be forced to submit. The ban wasn't about fairness, it was about control. And if the humans didn't realize this soon, they would be used as pawns in a larger, much more dangerous game. But there was more. The message mentioned something even more disturbing, an underground movement within the human gladiators. A group of them, tired of the restrictions and the manipulations, had begun to organize in secret. They were planning to break free from the system, to use their raw strength and newfound skills to challenge the very people who had orchestrated their rise in the arena. Diana felt her stomach twist. The truth was unfolding before her eyes, and it was more complicated than she could have ever imagined. She wasn't just training gladiators anymore, she was part of a revolution, one that would challenge the entire galactic order. But was humanity ready for what was to come? The discovery had set something in motion, something Diana couldn't stop. The fight for survival had become a fight for freedom, and it was clear that the future of humanity in the galaxy was about to be rewritten. Diana Falk had always believed that humanity's greatest strength lay in its mind, its ability to think, to adapt, to create. But as she watched her fighters in the arena, she began to realize that their physical strength was not just a tool, it was a weapon, a dangerous one, and it was slowly turning against them. At first, everything had seemed so straightforward. Diana had come to the arena with one goal: to train humanity's gladiators to survive, to protect them from the alien systems that sought to control them. The ban on weapons was a challenge, but Diana thought that humanity could rise above it. She had helped them develop new combat techniques, turning their raw physical strength into a powerful, efficient force. But what she hadn't anticipated was how quickly the humans would adapt, and how they would begin to use their new skills in ways that went beyond her control. It started with small things, little adjustments to the moves Diana had taught them, a slight modification in how they struck or grappled. It was subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. But then, over time, the changes became more drastic. The humans began using their bodies as weapons in ways that felt less like a disciplined martial art and more like brutal, instinctual violence. Diana was disturbed by the cruelty she saw in some of their tactics: broken bones, unnecessary strikes, moves that went far beyond self-defense. And it wasn't just about the fights anymore. It was about power. The more victories the gladiators achieved, the more they began to crave dominance. They had learned that their physical strength could overcome almost any challenge, and that knowledge was corrupting them. Diana's task had been simple: teach them to survive. But now, it was clear that the humans were beginning to view survival as a stepping stone to something darker, something much more dangerous. Some of them, like Eric, the strongest of the gladiators, had already begun to slip into a mindset of superiority. He no longer saw the arena as a place for proving oneself, it had become a place to crush all those who dared to compete. Eric's eyes, once full of fire and determination, now glinted with something colder: arrogance. One night, after a particularly brutal fight, Diana had stayed behind in the arena, watching as the last of the gladiators celebrated their victory. She could see it in their faces, the hunger for more, the thirst for power. They weren't just warriors anymore, they were conquerors. And Diana knew that if they didn't stop, there would be no turning back. Humanity had become a force of destruction, and she had helped make it so. It wasn't just the humans who were changing. The political landscape of the galaxy was beginning to shift, too. The alien governments that had originally banned weapons to weaken humanity were starting to realize that the humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. And worse, they were becoming dangerous. The intergalactic arena, once seen as a way to show off strength and skill, was now becoming a symbol of humanity's power. If the gladiators kept winning, it would only be a matter of time before humans were no longer just a curiosity, they would become the galaxy's most formidable force. Diana had already started to notice subtle shifts in the behavior of the arena's overseers. The once smooth operations were now filled with tension. There were murmurs of fear from some alien officials who had been watching humanity's rise. What had begun as a sport was quickly turning into a geopolitical crisis. The aliens who had banned weapons were now considering a far more drastic measure. They would find a way to control humanity before it could become a threat. They were starting to view the humans as a destabilizing force in the galaxy, something to be eradicated or controlled. It was during this time that Diana was approached by a high-ranking alien official named Mornax. Mornax was from the Thalric, a species known for their incredible intelligence and long history of political intrigue. Diana had met Mornax a few times before, always in the context of the gladiatorial games. He had always been polite, but distant. His species had never really shown any interest in humanity until now. Mornax invited Diana to a private meeting in one of the arena's quieter chambers. There, he spoke candidly about his concerns. "Humanity has become a problem," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "They are no longer just contestants in our games. They are becoming something more. The galaxy is not prepared for the rise of a species like yours." Diana felt a chill run through her. "What do you want from me?" "I want your help," Mornax said, leaning forward. "We need to control the gladiators before they disrupt everything. The weapon ban was always meant to keep them in check, but now I fear it's too late. They are beyond our control. But you are different. You understand them. You can help us stop them." Diana's stomach twisted. She had already begun to suspect that the true reason behind the weapon ban wasn't just to stop humanity from gaining power, it was to prevent them from disrupting the delicate balance of the galaxy's political order. But now, Mornax's words confirmed her worst fears. The very thing she had been fighting for, the survival of humanity, was being used as a tool of control. She was being asked to help alien forces suppress the gladiators she had trained. Her mind raced, torn between the need to protect humanity and the moral questions that were beginning to haunt her. What would happen if she helped Mornax? Would she be saving lives, or would she be aiding in the suppression of humanity's freedom? The weight of her decisions felt unbearable. Meanwhile, the gladiators were not the only ones struggling with their newfound power. The internal strife among the humans had become more pronounced. Eric's obsession with dominance had grown to the point where he began challenging other gladiators for control. The arena, once a place of unity and battle, had become a place of fractured alliances. Some gladiators had begun to rebel against Diana's teachings, no longer trusting her leadership. They had learned to rely on their strength and instincts, and they were starting to view Diana not as a mentor, but as a threat to their autonomy. In this chaotic environment, Diana formed an unexpected connection with an alien gladiator named Talon. Unlike the other aliens, Talon was not consumed by the desire for power. Instead, he seemed to be driven by a sense of empathy, a rare trait among his species. Talon confided in Diana one evening, telling her about his people's violent history, a history that mirrored humanity's own rise to power. He warned her that the path humanity was on was dangerous, not just for the galaxy, but for humanity itself. "Your species is at a crossroads," Talon said softly, his alien features reflecting the pain of his words. "The strength you possess is not a curse, but it can become one. The more you use it without control, the more it will consume you." Diana stood there, torn between two worlds, the human gladiators she had trained and the alien forces that sought to control them. She knew that the decisions she made now would have far-reaching consequences. And, deep down, she feared that the true battle, the one that would determine the future of humanity, was no longer being fought in the arena. It was being fought inside her own soul. The truth came crashing down on Diana Falk like a wave. She had spent months uncovering the hidden motives of the galactic powers, struggling to understand the complex web of political intrigue surrounding humanity's participation in the gladiatorial arenas. But what she had learned in the last few days turned everything she knew upside down. It wasn't just the ban on weapons that had been orchestrated to weaken humanity. No, the truth was far more chilling. The ban had been put in place to prevent humanity from gaining access to their own weapons technology, not because the galaxy's leaders feared humanity's physical prowess, but because they feared something much greater. The galaxy's ruling elite had watched as humans, with their creativity and ingenuity, had crafted weaponry far surpassing the best that any other species could produce. The fear wasn't that humanity would become a threat through combat skills alone. It was that humanity's ability to build destructive technologies might one day lead to the destruction of the galaxy itself. The humans had created weapons that could tear apart planets, weaponized technology that had the potential to wipe out entire star systems. The ban was a precautionary measure designed to hold humanity back until a greater plan could unfold. A plan where humanity would be kept in check, their technological advancements suppressed, until the galaxy's leaders had a clearer strategy for dealing with them. They hadn't wanted to stop humanity, they had wanted to control them, to keep them from using their power too soon, until the galaxy had a plan to either harness or neutralize humanity's potential. Diana's mind reeled with the enormity of this revelation. All this time, she had believed she was fighting for humanity's survival in the arena. She had thought the ban on weapons was a plot to weaken humans, to hold them back from their rightful place in the galactic hierarchy. But now, she realized the truth. Humanity's strength had always been the true fear of the galaxy. They had been put in the arena not just to entertain, but to keep them from ever reaching their full potential. The galaxy's leaders had feared what would happen if humanity ever unlocked its true power. Now, with that power bubbling to the surface in the form of gladiators, Diana found herself at the center of a moral nightmare. Her entire mission had shifted. It was no longer just about survival. It was about the future of humanity. She had a choice. She could either embrace this new reality and join a rebellion to fight against the galaxy, using humanity's weapons and strength to carve their way to power, or she could align with the greater plan, a plan that promised humanity's survival, but at the cost of their freedom. The rebellion that had formed among some of the gladiators, the underground movement she had heard whispers about, was more than just a response to the arena's oppression. It was a movement that sought to seize control of the galaxy through sheer force, using humanity's growing dominance in the arena as a stepping stone to a new kind of galactic order. Diana had learned that this faction was planning to manipulate the entire arena system, using it to create a new galactic government, a government where only the strongest species would hold power, and humanity, with its physical prowess and growing influence, would become the dominant force. Aside. Diana delved deeper into this faction's plans. She learned that they had a terrifying weapon, one that could change the entire course of history. It wasn't just a weapon of destruction, but one of transformation. This group had developed a form of evolutionary technology, a method of rapidly altering the human body to adapt to the galaxy's most dangerous environments. The technology was so advanced that it could instantly change a person's biology, granting them the strength, resilience, and capabilities needed to survive in any atmosphere, on any planet, in any combat situation. It was the ultimate evolutionary advantage, one that would make humanity virtually unstoppable. But there was a catch. The evolutionary process was not reversible. Once a person underwent this transformation, they would lose their humanity literally and figuratively. Their bodies would be engineered for survival, but their minds and spirits would be irrevocably altered. They would become something different, something that was no longer human. Diana stood at a crossroads. The faction's plan was clear, but its consequences were horrifying. If she allowed the faction to succeed, humanity would become a new type of weapon, an unstoppable force of nature, but at the cost of their very essence. She had already seen how the gladiators were becoming more and more consumed by their physical strength, their desire for power pushing them further away from their original mission of survival. If this new technology spread, there would be no going back. Humanity would no longer be the species that relied on intelligence, creativity, and diplomacy. They would become a species defined solely by their ability to conquer, to survive, and to dominate. The weight of this realization crushed her. She couldn't allow humanity to lose what made them human, but she also knew that the galaxy's leaders wouldn't allow them to rise without intervention. The weapon ban was a way to keep humanity's destructive potential in check. The evolutionary technology could free them from this control, but at an unimaginable cost. Diana's decision came to a head during a meeting with the faction's leaders. They had invited her to join them, to become a part of their vision for humanity's future. As she sat in the dark, cold chamber with them, her mind raced. The faction leader, Eric, the same gladiator who had once been her pupil, stood before her, his eyes burning with a fervor she hadn't seen before. "You can still join us, Diana," he said, his voice low and compelling. "With your knowledge and leadership, we could reshape the galaxy. Humanity could rule no more fear, no more restrictions. We would be unstoppable. The evolutionary technology will make us gods. Diana felt the pull of his words, but the warning in her heart screamed louder. She couldn't allow humanity to become like this. She couldn't allow them to lose everything they had fought for. The very thing she had spent her life studying, the essence of what made humanity unique, was at risk. In a moment of clarity, Diana made a decision that would change everything. She infiltrated the highest levels of the arena's management, using her position to access the secret technology. As she stood in front of the machine that could alter humanity's genetic code, she hesitated. This was the moment she had feared, to destroy it and prevent humanity from being transformed forever. But there was a price. To disable the technology, Diana would have to destroy the facility, and in the process, she might destroy herself. The facility's core was designed to be nearly indestructible, but if she triggered a shutdown, the energy feedback would likely take her life. She stood there, the weight of her decision pressing down on her. In that moment, Diana realized that saving humanity might mean losing herself. But it was the only way to stop them from becoming something they were never meant to be. She set the course for the shutdown, knowing that the consequences would ripple through the galaxy. As the countdown began, Diana's thoughts were filled with sorrow. She had chosen to save humanity not just from the galactic powers that sought to control them, but from themselves. She could only hope that the survivors would find their way back to the true essence of what it meant to be human. And as the machine hummed to life, Diana knew that she had made the only choice that mattered. The cost of survival was steep, but it was the price she was willing to pay. The moment Diana activated the shutdown sequence, she knew there would be no turning back. Her hand hovered over the final control, the facility's cold metal surface pressing against her skin. She had made the choice to stop humanity from becoming something they were never meant to be. But in doing so, she would lose herself. The energy surge from the shutdown would be enough to destroy her. The risk was enormous, and she understood it, but in that moment, there was no other choice. The machine hummed with a low, ominous vibration as the countdown reached its final seconds. Diana thought of the gladiators, of the humans who had been forced to fight in the arena. Pushed to the brink of their own humanity, she thought of Eric, the once heroic fighter who had become consumed by his own strength, and the others who had followed his lead. They were no longer the hopeful survivors they once were. They had become a shadow of their true potential. Her heart ached with the knowledge that, in stopping the evolutionary technology, she was erasing the chance for humanity to rise with a power they had never before known. But at what cost? To her, the cost of that power was far too great. Humanity's strength, its ingenuity, its ability to survive, had always been tied to more than just the physical. It was in their ability to think, to adapt, and most of all, to choose compassion over brute force. She believed that, at its core, humanity could rebuild itself without losing what made it unique. But to do so, they had to be free of the temptation to dominate. The shutdown sequence initiated, and Diana felt the shock of it surge through her, the facility's energy suddenly fluctuating wildly. She was fading. The last thing she saw was the blinking light of the control panel, its steady pulse now erratic, mirroring the rapid beating of her heart. When she woke, the world was silent. The gladiators, the fighters who had once fought with raw strength and fury, stood motionless in the now dead arena. The energy had surged, and the evolutionary technology had been destroyed, but at a tremendous cost. The facility around them flickered with failing power, and the once glowing technology that had offered them a chance at godlike strength was now a heap of twisted metal and broken circuitry. Diana was gone, but the consequences of her sacrifice echoed throughout the galaxy. The humans who had followed her, who had once believed they were the superior species, now found themselves faced with a hard truth. Their power, their physical might, had always been their greatest asset, but now they understood how easily that power could corrupt. Their physicality, once a tool of survival, had become a tool of destruction. Their unchecked strength had turned them into the very thing they had once feared, oppressors. In the aftermath, the surviving gladiators were broken. Many of them were lost, adrift in a world that no longer valued their raw strength. Eric, once the embodiment of humanity's potential, stood in the center of the arena, his eyes hollow and empty. His fists, once tools of destruction, now seemed useless, hollowed out by the realization of the cost of his obsession. His victory in the arena had been hollow from the start. He had won, but at what cost? The humans left the arena, their place in the galaxy uncertain. They were faced with a choice: either continue down the path of violence and tyranny, using their physical strength as a means to dominate, or they could rebuild a new society, one that valued wisdom, diplomacy, and cooperation over brute force. It was a painful choice, one that would take years, perhaps generations, to navigate. But it was one they had to make. Slowly, a new form of leadership began to emerge. It wasn't based on physical prowess or violence, but on those who could look past the primal urge to conquer. Diplomats, scientists, philosophers, people who believed that humanity's true strength lay not in the body, but in the mind, in the heart. These leaders began to shape a new direction for humanity, one that sought to balance strength with empathy, power with wisdom. But even as this new society began to take shape, a lingering question remained: was Diana's choice the right one? The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed. But the truth of what Diana had done, the sacrifice she made, would never be fully understood. Could humanity have risen to greatness with its newfound evolutionary abilities? Or was Diana's choice truly the only way to ensure their survival without losing their soul? As the human survivors rebuilt, the questions grew deeper. Had Diana chosen correctly by sacrificing herself? She had destroyed the very thing that could have made humanity the most powerful species in the galaxy. But she had also spared them from a fate that might have been worse than death: the loss of their humanity. In the silence of the ruins, a new kind of strength began to emerge. It wasn't a strength that could be measured by the number of victories in combat or the ability to crush an opponent. It was a strength that was quiet, reflective, and unyielding in its belief that true power was not found in domination, but in the ability to resist the urge to dominate others. The final twist came in the form of a discovery made by a group of human historians studying ancient texts that had been hidden away for centuries. Buried deep within the galaxy's forgotten archives was an ancient prophecy, one that spoke of a civilization that would rise from the ashes, a species that would change the course of history. The prophecy was vague, cryptic, but one thing was clear: humanity was meant to play a central role in the galaxy's future. The prophecy did not speak of weapons or strength. It spoke of endurance, unity, and the ability to adapt. And as humanity rebuilt itself, they began to wonder, was the greater plan Diana had feared all along truly a galaxy-wide conspiracy? Or had it been something more ancient, something beyond the comprehension of even the galaxy's most powerful beings? The question lingered. And as humanity began to forge a new future, they faced the most profound question of all: what is the true cost of power? Was it worth sacrificing one's very soul to wield it? Or was true strength found in the ability to resist the urge to dominate, to find peace within oneself and with others? And with that question, humanity's future remained uncertain but hopeful. The answers were yet to come, and they would define the path forward.